Hello, I'm Mike Pisani, and welcome to my speech about the first Missourian president, Harry S. Truman. Being a Missourian myself, I found it appropriate to use Harry S. Truman as a topic about this particular speech. After spending many hours studying and looking over anything I could find about Harry S. Truman, I feel that I can accurately describe his life from his early life, when he was a kid, to his death later. Let's begin with his early life first. And to describe his early life, I found a picture of him. He's probably 11 or 12 there, and he looks about the same as he did when he was an adult. Anyway, he was born in Lamar, Missouri in the May of 1884, where after that he moved multiple times and went to multiple different public schools, where eventually he finally graduated high school in Independence, Missouri, which is near Kansas City. Him and his family actually formally moved to Kansas City in 1902. After his graduation, he worked as a timekeeper and a bank teller, but he worked in two different banks while he was a teller. He eventually moved back with his family to help his father with his farm in Grandview, Missouri. And during that time, he also became a National Guardsman. Now, his National Guardsmanship was not his only military service. He had spent around 6 years in the National Guard, but when World War II came around, he actually served on an artillery team in France. He served in 3 different campaigns during World War I, and as a captain, by the way. After World War I was finished and done, he got promoted to colonel. But when World War II came around, he was offered to serve, but he was declined his service because he was already part of the Senate. He was actually elected to the Senate in 1934, and part of him being in the Senate was that he proposed the Aeronautics Act of 1938, which set up boards and administrations to provide citizens with safer air travel, which is super important. During his time in the Senate, Truman was elected to be Franklin Delano Roosevelt's vice president. Franklin Delano Roosevelt actually won that election in 1944, but he died in April of 1945, leaving Harry S. Truman to be president. Here is an actual picture of Harry S. Truman during his presidency. Harry S. Truman managed to do a great job as a president, and his first year was less than easy, though. He himself called his first year his year of decision. He called it this because he had made some of the hardest decisions anybody could possibly make. He made the call to drop the first atomic bombs ever in the history of the world on Nagasaki and Hiroshima in the August of 1945. Those bombs ultimately led to Japan dropping out of the war altogether, making them surrender. But actually, after World War II, he continued to make multiple strides as a president. He helped to form the United Nations and also assisted in preventing the expansion of the Soviet Union. After his first term was up and gone, he actually won his re-election against Thomas Dewey, which brings up a famous picture that you've probably seen, where it's him holding up a paper that says Dewey defeats Truman. Now, this picture, it's because during his re-election, he was going against Thomas Dewey. And Thomas Dewey actually won the popular vote during that election year. So that paper, the Chicago Tribune, they actually printed up a bunch of papers that said Dewey defeats Truman. But Truman actually won the electoral vote, so Truman stayed president. After his second term, though, Truman was not reelected, but he lived the rest of his life peacefully before dying at the ripe age of 88. He definitely lived a long life, and he's buried next to his wife in the courtyard of the National Library. And here's a picture of his gravestone. In conclusion, Truman was a very influential president, He started out as a boy from a small town, and he ended up becoming one of the biggest names in the country as president, taking over the spot of Franklin Delano Roosevelt. He continued to make contributions after his years in military service, and during World War II, he was able to take up position of president and made tough decisions in Franklin Delano Roosevelt's place. Even after the war, he continued to do good for the United States. He lived long and died peacefully, and he will always be remembered for his military and political contributions.